Okay, so we've
Okay,
got
we got
like
callers, I know.
a bunch of callers.
Thanks for answering my question, dude. I wasn't even a caller.
So
Appreciate it.
I'll take this next caller because it kind of goes into what the last caller and wants Kenneth to clarify his position. Eddie from Brute Facts Podcast, you are on with Kenneth and Dan. What do you got for us?
Yo, can you hear me good?
Yep.
Yeah,
we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay. Sweet. Just want to make sure. Kenneth, I wanted to, I'm not too far off from what you were saying about somebody, or what's considered evidence. I would take a different definition, more of a philosophical definition for it. But going back to the dog illustration that you brought up, I was on talking with the screener, so I didn't get to hear all of it. So with the dog, you believe that the dog exists for what reason?
Why do I believe the dog exists?
He missed like the end of the example that you were given. So
because literally everything about how what I would think of as myself interacting with reality, all of those experiences that I have and everything that I can test, everything that is demonstrable as it can be about reality, there's a consistency that leads me to have very, very good reasons to believe that dogs exist and that I'm interacting with a dog at the dog park.
Right. So
there's a sum total of experiences that I would refer to as reality, and dogs are part of that.
Okay. But aren't those your experience?
Yes.
Okay. Is your experience evidence for the fact that the dog exists?
Is my experience evidence for the fact that the dog exists? No, not necessarily. Maybe. I could be hallucinating the dog. But I have the question is one of justification for my beliefs. So in the instance of a dog at the dog park, I have really, really good reasons to think that what I'm experiencing is reality and that dogs exist in reality. So when we're evaluating anything about these kind of things, I mean, everything comes down to how good is my justification for the belief that I have. So for the dog, I just have really good justification.
What's your justification?
For dogs?
Yeah, for dogs existing.
For dogs existing. I've met dogs. Yeah, I'm assuming that you and Ethan and Dan, we've all met dogs. We can test this. We can go, okay, there are pictures of dogs. We can go to the museum and find out about dogs, and we can read books about dogs. And all over reality, there's evidence littered everywhere supporting the claim dogs exist.
But all of that's based on your experience.
Well, it's also our collective shared experience. If I was experiencing something that was dogs and nobody else was experiencing it, or I and a select group of people were experiencing dogs, but they were invisible to other people and they just had to take our word for it, and our justification for believing in dogs were like anonymously written gospels of dogs that were, written thousands of years ago, I wouldn't be in good shape. But with dogs existing in reality, there's just mountains and mountains of evidence. So I don't have to rely on my subjective experience. My subjective experience is just one more teeny tiny little piece of the puzzle supporting the claim dogs are real.
Well, no, because you checking your experience with others is also your experience. So you're in a circle. You're called in circular reasoning.
No, I'm not. I mean, I have no other. So I necessarily am trapped in my own experience. That is correct. But then the question of our experiences being consistent with reality is the whole game here. And the conclusions that we draw being consistent with reality, that's the entire enterprise when we're talking about truth, right? So
well,
when we're talking about
to Eddie's point here, though, maybe, and I don't know if I'm sorry if I'm cutting you off, but the only thing that we have to go off of in defining what is and is not reality is experiential, right? Like, name one thing that you can describe as being a defining characteristic of being real and reality that isn't experiential on some level.
The difference here, the key component here is that it is very possible to have experiences that are not consistent with reality. And we know that about ourselves as a species.
How do you know someone else's experience does not comport with reality when you're using your experience to judge their experience? That's the issue I have. When you say that...
So it's not just my experience that I'm using. There's ways of testing our experience. That's what science is.
Everything boils down to your experience.
No, everything does not boil down to my experience.
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does.
It doesn't.
It does, because if you say, well, there's this evidence, that evidence, and this evidence, that evidence is according to your experience of that evidence, even if you ask other people.
No, it's not. There's a very subtle bit of confusion here. So with the thing that's coming to mind, and this might not be a great example, but it's what's coming to mind, is I used to live in New York City, and I had the experience many, many times of being on the subway where there's one person on the subway who clearly sees things that nobody else on the subway sees. And
I have shared in a similar experience. I will.
Yeah, it's happened to me in Chicago when I lived there too. Yeah. Of being on the L, and there's one schizophrenic there who's seeing stuff that nobody else sees. Now, yes, I am relying on my experience that I don't see what that guy sees, and I'm looking around at everybody else having the exact same reaction that I'm having, and people muttering and moving away from the guy at the end of the cart who's talking to the people who don't seem to be there. Now, is it possible that that guy's the only one who's in touch with reality and the rest of us, are somehow confused? I guess, but I don't have any reason to believe that. So again, it all comes down to justification.
Right. So, and Aristotle recognized this problem of justification. It's the regress of justification. There has to be a stopping point for justification. That stopping point is our experience, or in philosophy, what we call intuition. So we have to start with the intuition, and ultimately we're going to end with the intuition, lest there be a regress. So that's based on personal experience. So if somebody has a personal experience that they saw something spiritual or God, I absolutely agree. That's not evidence to you. But
no, it's not evidence at all. This is conflation, my friend.
Evidence.
This is conflation. Me being stuck at the cogito of being like, I think, therefore I am, and that kind of being like ground zero for my experience of reality is different from someone.
I'll keep talking about that.
I'm saying that would be different from, like me not being able to solve the problem of hard solipsism, which nobody can. It is distinct. We're on different footing from someone saying, I saw something during when my brain was in an oxygen deprived state, therefore I'm justified in believing in God. Like, what are we doing here?
No, it has nothing to do with solipsism. Nothing at all.
Okay.
This is about an inconsistent epistemology, because you have your experiences, which are evident, I would argue, are evidence for your beliefs, and others have different experiences. Now, whether
my experiences have to be propped up by something else. My experience on its own isn't enough for me, because I care about whether or not my experiences are consistent with reality. If I didn't, and I could just be like, well, my experiences can mean whatever I want them to mean, well, then then yeah, my experiences are evidence. But that's not where I am. I care too much about whether my beliefs are true.
Right, but everything that you judge as evidence or to be true is based on your experience. That's the circularity I'm talking about.
There's more to it than my experience. My experience has to be tested by other stuff. It has to be verified and verifiable. I can verify that I exist in reality.
So, okay, yeah, but what I'm saying, I don't think you're following me. Maybe I'm not articulating it the best. If I go, let's say, let's take your dog example. I know a dog exists, right?
Okay.
If I go to a park and I see 50 dogs, and for years I go to this park and I see different dogs everywhere, dogs all the time. Well, then I am confident in the belief that dogs exist.
Mhm.
But that is still based on my experience of dogs. So we have to have a starting point, which is usually, intuition or some kind of axiom or something like that. And our starting point is always our experience. That's
right.
my point. I don't disagree with you checking your experience with reality. I totally agree with that. But when somebody else has a convincing experience, it doesn't mean that that's not evidence for what they believe.
Just so you know, we got about 2 minutes on this call before we have to move on.
It's funny that you use the word convincing because people have convincing experiences all the time, and they find compelling reasons to believe things all the time. But convincing experiences and compelling reasons can lead people to false conclusions. And we know that. I hope that's not something that's even up for debate. And as long as that's the case, our experiences have to be verified by something else for them to be considered to be evidence. There has to be more. Just the experience isn't enough.
I'll get off here so others can get on. My contention was dismissing others' experiences when we actually justify everything that we consider knowledge and that with experience.
But I'm not in any way dismissing other people's experiences. I fully appreciate and validate and recognize that people have experiences, but those experiences may or may not be evidence for things. It depends.
No, I agree. I don't disagree. My contention was when you said that it's not evidence for the person to believe that. That was the issue I had.
Well, is for the schizophrenic on the bus who thinks he's talking to Abraham Lincoln, is his experience evidence that he's talking to Abraham Lincoln, or is he confused?
That's evidence to him. That's kind of the whole point, right? It's not necessarily saying that's how reality is.
We're
but as far as
diluting
his ability,
evidence.
His ability to embrace and understand and accept that belief. And maybe this is like a way where, I mean, atheists and theists have a hard time coming to an understanding here. Like, to understand how to have a reflective and respectful conversation with theists, you got to understand that their experience is a reflection of.
I'm gonna hop off so somebody else can get on. I'll let you guys finish that conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate the call for sure. But like, are we really saying that the schizophrenic on the bus who thinks he's talking to Abraham Lincoln, that his experience is evidence that his experience is somehow something other than just confusion?
I'm saying that he is using that as evidence to believe, to accept the belief that he thinks in his head.
Right. So should
that's
he
the whole
be
point.
doing that?
That's the whole point, Kenneth. That's the whole point.
No, I understand that. Should he be doing that? If his experience is taking him away from reality, should he be following that path?
In that instance, definitely not. I think we're in agreement there. Yeah.
That felt like progress. All right, Ethan.
It felt like progress. A little bit of progress.
You guys, real quick,